habits have caused it, and 30 for a life of excellence seemingly harmless products, such as chocolate. In other words, addiction may refer to a substance dependence, e.g., drug addiction, or behavioral addiction, e.g., 12 gambling addiction. All addictions are products of habits. Depending on your makeup and emotional maturity, you can get addicted to almost anything. Believe it or not, there is even one woman I watched who was seeking deliverance from addiction to finding scriptures before she took any action in her life, including when to let the husband have access to her body. She could not even step out to work unless the portion of scripture she opened told her to do so. Addictions are just habits on steroids. They might not be bad habits in themselves, but habits that you cannot control when and how they are done. Addictions are simply habits which are out of control and have begun to negatively impact the life of the addict. According to Jaff, substance use often begins as a simple rewarded experience, which through repetition and the rewiring of the brain's learning and reward circuits can become habitual. If that habit escalates into problematic substance use, we can end up with something that our society has called addiction. 13. There are many people occupying sensitive positions in life who are still addicted to 16. 20 things I wish I has mastered by age 30 for a life of excellence, habits which if exposed will ruin all they have built for decades. These people have not been able to overcome the addiction because they refuse to accept the fact that their bad habits led them there. These people blame all kinds of things, both physical and spiritual, for their addiction, but refuse to accept that it took a habit to get there, and so they need another powerful habit to break the cycle of addiction. No addiction just leaves on its own because it takes over the mind and sometimes even the body till if not checked it destroys and kills the addict. Addictions are another powerful consequence of habits. 6 bad creatures of habit. 4 poverty. I know people are very sensitive to other people telling them that they are responsible for their poverty, because one of the commonest habits of the poor is that they never take responsibility for their lives. Poor people, in spite of their color, believe generally that some other person is responsible for pulling them out of poverty. In any society where other groups are prevented for years from making their own decisions through slavery or servitude, that group, even after many years of freedom, are still largely poor. Because the greatest 17. 20 things I wish I has mastered by age 30 for a life of excellence. Antidote to poverty is the idea that everyone is responsible for his or her own life. So poverty has no color or relation but a set of habits and beliefs. A poor country or group has the same characteristics irrespective of where you find them in the world. In any poor country or neighborhood you find excess filth, absentee fathers, crime, and lots of children per mother, poor infrastructure, and general lack of data on important social indicators and so on. No one escapes poverty by waiting for another person to work it out for him. Go to poor countries and neighborhoods and they are always talking about how government can make their life better. People in such places are quick to make money irrespective of who gets hurt, and most people with poverty-inducing habits lose millions when they are lucky to get money through sports or gambling. Poverty-inducing habits includes living to please others, spending more money on consumption than education, no interest in reading, thinking only short-term when it comes to planning, spending hours watching others on TV, not having delayed gratification, and so on. These are the habits progressive countries design policies to tackle for economic growth and poverty eradication. The culture of my country taught me that being rich happens to you at 18. Habits of industry and entrepreneurship that they practiced more than others in the general population. I then resolved to never be poor in my life and adopted the habits of the rich and discontinued those of the poor in my life. For me, being worthy is being healthy. Wealth needs only the grace of God, a compelling vision, and time to build it. 5 crime. I believe bad habits and crime are strongly correlated. Bad habits do not necessarily become crime, but bad habits escalates to crime. That is why police officers can tell you what crime happens the most in which areas of the city. There are families where most of the males are in jail. There are whole neighborhoods in the USA where every family has a member or more in prison. You would have thought that the next generation, having lived without their fathers for most of their life, would make better choices. But they pick the same habits from the neighborhood and end up 19. 20 things I wish I has mastered by age 30 for a life of excellence. Becoming just like the father they disliked so much. Crimes are simply habits which break the law of a country. There are people who spend most of their adult life in prison because the crimes they commit are bad habits that if they do not change will keep recurring till they die. The desire for quick money, inability to control one's temper, uncontrolled lust, etc., are all habits which lead to criminal conduct. 6. Mediocrity. Just as excellence is a habit, mediocrity is also the product of a habit. Remember the many times you were told not to aim too high because you do not come from a privileged background. Recall the many times you were told not to do something because of your gender, because it is mainly done by people of the other gender. The tendency to assign someone to a particular fate in life because it has happened to people of similar disposition is a bad habit which forces people to accept below par performance. I attended a public basic school in a small town. This condition was enough to make teachers and parents alike assume I could not compete with the best students in the country. I remember a friend choosing the best secondary school at the time before we 20 things I wish I has mastered by age 30 for a life of excellence. Wrote our basic education exams. Our own teachers called him and spent more than an hour dissuading him to choose the sixth best school in the country because the best one is too risky. What baffled us at the time was the fact that a senior of ours had made it to that school a year ahead of us. Underperformance runs through societies not because of a genetic disposition but because it is taught and passed down from generation to generation. This friend of mine accepted the advice and changed the school to the one recommended by the teachers. When the result came, he had excellent in 11 out of the 12 subjects. He had passed so well he was in the best 1% of the entire graduating class that year. His desire to excel dwindled after he was denied that opportunity. I went to secondary school and university with him and saw the once best student in our year group becoming average with each passing year. The role of guardians and parents is not to use their limits as a barrier for the next generation but to push them to do better than them. Check every failing society and you will realize that the prevailing mantra there is that the past was better than the present. The very things which brought them to mediocrity they praise in the present, because the current generation cannot go 20 things I wish I has mastered by age 30 for a life of excellence to the past to verify. As an African proverb goes, if you did not hear it raining, then you should have known when you came out of the house after the rain and found the entire surroundings wet. Ask the average Chinese about life and he or she will tell you that these days are better than the past. That is the habit of a society which is advancing and going places. Two good creatures of habits. One, language and accent. One of the most interesting products of habits is language and the accents within the same language or dialect. I am sure you never heard anyone say that language is a habit. Well, it is, because every word you know in your native tongue and any second language you know was learned, including the pronunciation and where and when to use expressions. The phrase mother tongue clearly tells us that we learned our native language and acquired the accent of our official language from the parent or guardian who raised us. Language is a habit we acquired from the people we interacted with as we were growing up. Thus, why in the same country, different communities use different accents and slangs for the same language. No one is born with an accent. Most of the time, we 22.
No sign up, registration, or credit card. Just choose your region and tap to connect. You can choose from many virtual locations and switch with one simple tap. With Unlimited VPN, you can access all your websites and apps securely and privately from anywhere.
20 things I wish I has mastered by age 30 for a life of excellence spent in learning a language is on how to pronounce words. What is the relevance of this? The way a person speaks does not make the person. Never let anyone look down on you because of how he or she speaks. It is just a habit acquired from where the person grew up or where he or she was raised. This is the secret behind children's ability to pick languages so fast. Children have formed the habit of learning new things all the time, including a language or two, and are even open to learn about 5 languages at a time because they see them as just acquiring new habits. Adults are usually very slow at picking languages because we are fixated on picking the right pronunciation or the right grammar. Indeed, many adults speak other languages using the pronunciations and rules of their mother tongue. This confirms that language is indeed an acquired habit that we cannot even seem to drop when speaking another. Language is not the best predictor of the speaker's knowledge of the culture of the area, though he may share their accent. However, for many in the developing world, a British or American accent means intelligence. Forgetting the language you know already, coupled with patience and determination, you can learn any language you want. After all, it is just like acquiring another habit to enable you succeed in life. 23. 20 things I wish I has mastered by age 30 for a life of excellence. 2. Praying at set times in a day. Praying at set times of the day is a habit of many people around the world. My mom used to be an expatriate teaching English in the country of Niger, and she told me that several times as they traveled on the highways there, the driver will stop unfailingly to pray at set times in the day. The driver often stopped in the middle of nowhere to pray by the roadside. Like an addiction, they had to pray no matter how inconvenient it made the non Muslim passengers waiting in the bus. Daniel prayed 3 times in a day without fail towards Jerusalem for decades in the kingdom of Babylon. It was a habit he could not stop even after it had become a crime punishable by death. Now, when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. Daniel 6:10. Jesus had a habit of going to lonely places to pray. His secret habit of prayer is what accounted for the awesome power he displayed in public. Jesus often got up early in the morning before dawn. 24. 20 things I wish I has mastered by age 30 for a life of excellence. But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. Luke 5:16. The whole nations of Israel had set times for prayer during which every self-respecting Jew went to the synagogues for prayer. It was such a habit that everyone, no matter their heart, went for prayer during those times. One day Peter and John were going up to the temple at the time of prayer, at 3 in the afternoon. Acts 3:1. Now that we have learned about habits and the power they have over our tendencies, let us now consider why we need to develop these winning habits before no other age than age 30 in the next chapter. 25. 20 things I wish I has mastered by age 30 for a life of excellence. Gold nuggets. Powerful creatures of habits. 1. Many vices which plague mankind today are creatures of habits too. Many people are carrying burdens which can change if they will be prepared to unlearn the habit which led them to that situation instead of blaming others. 3. Habits control more than 90% of the things we do in a day. 4. Powerful habits have produced many consequences which plague the world today and need a reversal or replacement habit to undo them. 26.